Välkommen upp, Arno Smit!
Hej!
Tack så, välkommen.
Tack.
Du representerar ett startup.
Ja.
Ganska nytt sådant, eller hur?
Absolut. Ja.
Ja, många servrar har ni i källaren? Hur många gamla system, legacy-system har ni?
Nothing.
Ingenting? Nej,
Ingenting.
Precis.
Ingenting.
100% molnet?
Absolut. Ja.
Du ska få berätta om er resa och hur ni jobbar. Varsågod, Arno.
Tack. Nu ska jag bara ta den här. So, this thing is going to be held in English, and I hope that everyone can kind of like stay with me. In order for me to kind of like understand the decisions that we make, I think it's very important to understand the person and the actual story that they have. And it's usually quite interesting when you start talking to someone that you ask them, tell me your story. But now I'm going to turn this the other way around, and I'm actually going to tell you guys my story. So here we go. A little bit more about me. My name is Arno Smit. I'm one of the co-founders and the CTO for a company called FoundedByMe. I was born in a small little mining town in a country called Namibia. For those of you who haven't heard about it, don't worry, don't pull up your phones right now. I've actually gotten a nice little picture for us there on the right-hand side. Now, usually when you kind of like put those pictures together, you would think that it would be a normal kind of like way of growing up, but this would actually be quite a similar picture of live antelopes running around in the little city where I am. So it's not just only cats and dogs running around. But put two and two together, tell people I'm from Africa, this is usually the picture that they would have of you. One thing that I can say is it has not been the summer of '94, and for all of you who live here in Sweden, you know that we've had a pretty bad summer. So with a midsummer that looked like that, it's pretty hard to get a good tan where you end up looking like that. Anyway, my career has been, quite long when I kind of like looked back at it and thought, like, what is it that I can actually talk about here today? Because I think that it's very interesting to see who the person is that actually makes these decisions. So for me, when my career basically started at the age of 6, believe it or not. My mom invested a little bit of money in me and my sister, and we were actually the only kids who got permission from the municipality in order to sell popcorn at a pool. What a bad idea, because you can just imagine wet popcorn all over the place, not the best idea ever. But moving on from that, I started a little car wash with some friends, recruited 3 or 4 friends, and for each one of them that actually managed to wash a car, I took a little bit of a commission in order to feed my addiction for arcade games at that stage. When I got to high school, I made the obvious choice that a normal high school wasn't for me, but I was going to enroll myself into a technical high school. And one of the biggest things that I would always sit down and kind of like talk about my friends with would be computers, technology, and the big thing that they would actually complain about is just how expensive it is back in the days when you used to buy like old boxes and everything. So I went to all of the local distributors, ordered in some bare-bone boxes, motherboards, RAM, chips, everything you named it, and sold it at a fraction of the price of what these guys could actually get it for. Since then, I took a little bit of hiatus from my entrepreneurial road and decided that I needed to focus on high school, but left for Cape Town, where I went to go and study to be a webmaster. What a wonderful word that is nowadays, because no one does it anymore. Thought that I was going to get the best job in the world, packed my bags, left for London with 800 pounds in my pocket. Did not get the job that I thought that I was going to get. Ended up staying on a couch for about 3 months and ate 2-minute noodles for 3 weeks every single meal. Took the first job that I could, ended up working for an IT sales company, and after about a year I kind of like figured out, I'm wasting my parents' money. Like, why did I go and study and now in this kind of like journey? I started a little freelance web and graphic design agency where I just got a couple of customers. But as a Southern African, you're only allowed 2 years in the UK. So after that, I basically had to pack up and decided that I wanted to travel. What I thought would be 3.5 months actually became 3.5 years of my life. And when I got to Sydney, I got headhunted for a third-party Apple retailer where I built out all of their web services. And before I knew it, the CEO and myself actually had more in common than what we could ever think of. I did my first real startup at the age of 25, and this is really where I got my big kind of like touch on the cloud and what the cloud actually meant to me. The one thing that we kind of like saw is that both of us had a real kind of like craving for being close to aviation, and at this stage he was kind of like looking in order to buy a new aeroplane. The one thing that we saw is that every single year there's 33,000 aircraft being traded, and the big problem that we basically saw is that with the kind of like method of how you could actually advertise it, that brought some opportunity along for us. The problem that we saw with the traditional classifieds was the fact that it was distributed on a monthly basis, it was extremely expensive to advertise for people, and it was a really tedious process. Like, you had to take old photos, you actually had to send it in to these guys, and then by the time when you might have actually called them up to try and buy the aeroplane, it might have already been gone. So for us, we built a cloud-based solution that was accessible 24/7, easy to use, and affordable for people to basically advertise. Now, with all of that technology, and the company was called Aviation Advertiser. And from that, I managed to live out my childhood fantasy of being Maverick from Top Gun. Who didn't want to be that? I found myself every week, maybe once or twice, going out to airports where I would be involved in flying in some of these lovely airplanes. I've had the ability to fly in like Apache helicopters, DC-3s, DC-4s, Yak-52, Spitfires, and plenty of home builds and everything. And that was the way that we really kind of like moved forward in order to gain traction in the market and essentially take over a traditional classifieds and really establish ourselves as the player in the market when it came to aviation. I immersed myself so deep into the market that we ended up staying in a hangar for about 6 months, dined and wined with some old Vietnam War veterans and sat and listened to all of their stories and created content around that so that we could just really provide the best service in the aviation industry for people in order to advertise. With all of this technology, I started feeling that I was missing out a little bit because Australia, South Africa, 8 to 10 hours difference. I started losing contact with my parents. I hadn't seen them for about 4 years. And when the first opportunity basically came along, I kind of like jumped ship and left with my girlfriend at the time, wife now, to Europe. At least I could be within the same timeline. Little did I know I would be screwed out of my own business and I had to start all over again. Lovely things that you learn along the way. But fate brought me to meeting my future co-founder, a guy called Daniel Dabotsi, very humble, very down to earth. We did a couple of projects together, and this is really where the kind of like the evolution of FoundedByMe came along. We had an idea which was called Ideas for Change, and it was essentially taking crowdsourced information and just basically putting that online. And if I can give you an example, it would be someone maybe sitting in the US that has access to knowledge where they could essentially use household items in order to desalinate water and give it to someone sitting in a third world country. And we just wanted to be that platform in order to share that information. The one thing that was kind of like stopping us in order to scale this product was obviously money. We needed to invest more into it. We needed to get better access to servers. We needed to get better access to services that we could actually add on and make sure that we could do what we needed to do. This led us to figuring out that the only way for us to get money was to go to a company called Kickstarter. Now, just quick show of hands, who's heard of them? Quite a few. Well, at that stage, these guys didn't actually accept any people from Europe. So we were so, to put it in Swedish, förbannat, that we ended up with the FoundedByMe journey. We saw, and you'll see with all of the things that I've mentioned here, you'll see that I've been very quick in order to kind of like see a gap in the market and actually make something out of that. And the FoundedByMe journey has been nothing but so. We put up a basic page, we connected PayPal to it, we reached out to our networks, and we ended up raising 104,000 crowns in 60 days, where we would then give rewards like hugs, t-shirts, lectures, and mentions on the website. And if there's anyone else that I owe a hug in this room, just let me know afterwards, because I know that there's a few of them that we still haven't given back to. But Daniel, being his extroverted self, sent out a press release, said, we're going to give ourselves 30 days in order to launch the best product in the world. A good friend of ours, Reid Hoffman, once said that if you are not embarrassed about the first version of your product, you've launched it too late. So we have been around for some time, and does anyone know a company called Flipping Burgers? Well, okay, there's quite a few of them. Great, that's fantastic. But little do people actually know that they came to us for financing. So this guy, Jon Widegren, Ernst & Young consultant, crazy about hamburgers. He was writing his own blog, put out a blog post one day, got a lot of people to basically follow him, and got Hellmann's Mayonnaise to sponsor him to go on a trip to the US. He did so for 30 days, ate 60 hamburgers, obviously came back with love handles in order to prove it, and a lot of knowledge about the hamburger industry. Being a really good consultant from Ernst & Young, he went to the banks and he went to Almi. What did they say? No. He turned to us. He obviously said that he wanted to have 1 million crowns in the beginning, and we said like, how the hell are we going to do this? But we didn't do it. The thing that we have been able to do for him was basically build up the momentum that he needed in order to get to where he is today. That picture right there is from one of the first days when he actually launched it, and he gave people the opportunity to buy these lovely hamburgers at a discounted deal, and eventually, when the company is working and it goes live, then you can get your one hamburger for free. He got 187 people to back him, raised about 36,000 crowns, but this company is still around, and this has really been kind of like the, if you can say, the momentum that really brought the hamburger craze to Stockholm, if I can put it this way. Another company is Oculus Rift. These guys were not backed by FoundedByMe, but I'm going to talk about some of the experiences where you can take small and large. It's a virtual reality helmet that you could basically put on. You can play games. It just makes the experience much better. 9,500 people backed it with about $2.4 million, and 2 years after their journey on Kickstarter, they got bought for $2 billion for Facebook. So it's a big mistake to make. The big problem with these is I'm a backer of both, but my journey ended there. When I got the hamburger, I was quite full, it was quite nice, but that's where my journey ended. Of course, I've gone back many times, and now I'm talking to you guys about this here. Flipping Burgers today, when I looked at their financials for last year, they've done 26 million crowns and they have about 23 staff. Imagine if I could have taken that money and owned a little bit of the company back then. And the same thing with these guys. Would you have, at that stage, had the ability to take the money that you spent on the product and invested it, and Facebook then bought them, you would have netted $250,000. That's where the feedback iteration loop comes in. When we sat down with a guy from a brewery, he said that it's impossible for me to send out beer as rewards, but what would also be great is ownership. Having listened to those guys and having involved our customers for such a long time, we've been able to sit down, build out the products, launch a couple of new products, and this was essentially what we launched. Equity crowdfunding. And if you can put it in a nutshell, FoundedByMe is a marketplace for connecting investors and entrepreneurs. An example for this, and an example on how we're kind of like helping entrepreneurs, is the fact that Mormor Magdas is a local ice cream company from Jönköping, obviously not Stockholm. But in a traditional way, what you would do is when you're looking to raise financing for your company and you're not listed on the stock market, you would actually go to maybe 2 or 3 business angels, you would beg them for money, and you would take whatever kind of like offer you can get. Here we've been able to level the playing field for these guys, and within 4 weeks they took in 1.7 million crowns from 148 investors from 5 different countries. Now, the 148 is not that interesting, but if you look at the amount of countries where the investors actually came from, why would they invest into a company in Jönköping? It just goes to show you that no longer is it the investor that is sitting on the power, but it's the entrepreneurs that are leveling the playing field for us. Another guy came to us about 6 months before he actually listed it. He had exactly that journey. He went to a couple of business angels. They treated him really badly. They gave him the worst terms ever. And he just had a really bad Magkänsla, as they say. He came to us and said, I'm really not sure if I actually want to do it with these guys. But as soon as he launched, he held the record for the fastest funded company in the Nordics by raising 9.2 million crowns in 5 days from 191 investors in 12 different countries. Something which is quite interesting, though, is to tell you that this guy has now come back for a second financing round, and I didn't even know this when I was putting the presentation together, but within 9 hours of launching, he raised 5 million crowns from his follow-up round. Why introduce more products? Well, we're never happy. When you're a startup, you're always kind of like trying to find different ways in how you can monetize on your business and making sure that when you spend money or when you spend resources that you can create a long-term vision for the company. And for us, one of this is basically loans. We use UC and Biznode in order to pull in information, actually put that through our algorithm, and then give us something which is called a probability of default, how likely this company is about to fail within the next 12 months. If they go live, then that's great, and we can then say to potential lenders just exactly how much you can get back by lending money to this company. Can I just a show of hands, like who at this stage gets any interest from your bank? And I'm not talking anything under 1%. Yeah. Not a lot of people. So what we're doing is our latest product is actually help people offer a different way in how they could make money and interest on their savings. So we've been able to close 3 cases, 1.5 million crowns, and we've had one that's already paid back the 110,000 crown loan to 29 lenders. So what does a company in the cloud actually look like? Now we get to the fun stuff. Oops, sorry. What? That way. I've taken the liberty of just putting down a few logos, and I'm going to talk about them. But on a company-wide level, we use Slack, plus the other ones. I mean, the other ones you know quite widely. But for us, Slack has really been able to decrease the amount, I'll move this way a little bit, has been able to decrease the amount of emails that we actually send internally. And I think we've been able to cut down pretty much on about 50% of emails. It really helps us just to spawn up a new room, talk about a particular topic, and once we're done with it, we can archive it and forget about it. No more kind of like sending emails back and forth. In marketing and communications, we use all of the normal ones plus a product which is called Intercom. This has really become the backbone of the way in how we communicate with our customers, because as you can see now, I've already spoken about 3 different products. Not all those products actually communicate with everyone that is sitting in the room. But at least if we know who these people are, if we know what their preferences are, if we know what browser they use, browser language, where they're sitting, how many transactions they've done, essentially what they ate for breakfast, then we can better communicate with them and send out relevant information, meaning that you can get better open rates, click-through rates, and eventually communicate to the right crowd rather than sending out spam and not knowing what you should make of that communication. In sales, we use Pipedrive. A lot of salespeople in here, I see. Pipedrive, just very easy for us to kind of like understand how hot or how cold a lead is, and better for us to understand how should we spend our time when we talk to customers. Shall we spend 10 minutes, 20 minutes, 30 minutes? Because we all know that all of these Swedish meetings, I mean, they take up a lot of time, right? It's crazy. On the product team, we work extensively with Python and Django. We collaborate using GitHub. And the reason why we use this is whenever we have a new developer that actually comes on board and they're working on a particular feature and they want to put that feature into production, it makes it very easy for us to actually criticize and see what is done and whether they keep up to those particular standards. So it's quite often that when a new person comes in, they might have a lot of comments on it, just saying that, you should do this or you should do that. And as time goes along, those amount of information might decrease, which means that we as a product team actually build our knowledge simultaneously without leaving someone behind. We plan using Pivotal Tracker, which means that we can get a better understanding of the product that we're building and how it's actually broken down, and ultimately it gives us a better overview on how we should communicate with our shareholders and when we can deliver on a particular product. Obviously, we never say a particular set date, but it just gives us a better understanding to say that it might be in a couple of weeks. We use Upbeat for tracking issues and seeing what impact it has on deployments, and we use Mixpanel in order to measure the success of a feature. I mean, obviously, again, based on the fact that we have a couple of different products, we might have some different sales funnels. So when we make a small change, we want to be able to benchmark ourselves and see, did that change and the money that we actually invested into building this make a difference on a positive aspect or on a negative aspect? We host everything with Amazon Web Services, and you'll see that I just striked out Heroku because we recently moved over to them, and I'm going to talk very quickly why. For us, Heroku has been really fantastic in the beginning when we are a startup. We wanted to prototype a few things. We just wanted to focus on basically building the product, getting it out. But the negative that we've always had is we felt like we've been over-optimized and underutilized. And what I mean by that is, if you look at that little curve which is there, that might represent a week or a month at FoundedByMe. We might have campaigns that bring in, excuse my words, a shitload of traffic, and then some campaigns that are just very low traffic. But without us actually communicating to our marketing team, we will never know which ones are going to be good or which ones are going to be bad. So we've always had to be kind of like benchmark up at that stage. With AWS, it's been able, AWS, Amazon Web Services. For us, it's been able to give us more flexibility by having an independent distributed system where we have multiple availability zones. And with multiple availability zones, I mean that if Frankfurt, for some reason, goes down, all of our traffic is automatically redirected to Ireland, which means that we can have uptime to the maximum so that our investors can discover more opportunities which might be out there. And here comes the real kicker. We've been able to bring in auto-scaling. So by us just putting down, spending a little bit of time, putting in place our recipes, we no longer have to worry about having those particular curves, because that actually means that that's money which is wasted for us. Anything below the green line and above the black line is basically wasted resources. And as a startup, you obviously know that you're always strapped for cash and you got to really prioritize and reprioritize. So by introducing AWS, we've been able to cut down on about 15 to 20% of our infrastructure costs. So what do we look like? Well, we're a multicultural team of 15 individuals. 15. People from Namibia, Romania. My co-founder always says, you know, on paper we are uninvestable because I'm a coder from Africa and he's a Romanian art major. But we've been able to attract some really fantastic people, people that are sitting in this room here, people that used to work for Facebook, Microsoft, Accenture, relevant within the finance industry. And thus far, since we've launched our product and a little bit talking more about the equity product, we've been able to fund 57 companies, thousands of projects with 150 million Swedish, ultimately resulting in about 150 jobs that we've created. And on that note, I want to say thank you. So, thank you.